In the webinar today, we're going to be discussing neuroergonomics, brain-based ergonomics. Now, the goal for the webinar is to make this very practical for everybody who's watching. So my goal is to go through some specifics about what brain-based ergonomics is, why is that relevant to us as healthcare professionals, and then give you some actionable takeaways so that you can actually take this information and implement it with your clients within your practices, because that's what it's really all about. So it's one thing to just give you guys a bunch of information. It's another thing to really dive in and understand how we can utilize this stuff in practice. So Dr. Krista here. For everybody who's joining us, I know you guys are just logging on. I would love for you to say hello. Let me know where you're listening from. And let me know if you're a CPE or a CPN, which means that you're part of our community as a certified postural expert or certified postural neurology. And let us know who you are, where you're from, and what you're up to. So again, as you log on, just let us know where you're logging in from. And as I was just mentioning, we're going to be diving deep into brain-based ergonomics tonight. And if I'm honest with you, my personal preference is that this is the most interesting aspect of ergonomics. And I'll talk a little bit more about it. At the American Posture Institute, we have certain ways that we view ergonomics. And one of the things that we like to focus on is that we really like to focus on brain-based ergonomics because it's so important and it's just missed by so many other people focusing on ergonomics. We have Janine. Hi, Janine. Janine's a CPN. She's in Massachusetts. We have Scott from Singapore. We have Catherine from Michigan. So we have people coming in from all over the place. I'm actually in New York City myself right now. Usually I'm in Puerto Rico, but I'm in New York City for the weekend. And Jean from Connecticut. Hi, Jean. Thanks for joining. Again, guys, as you're logging in, just let us know who you are, where you're from, and if you are a CPE or a CPN, which means that you're already a part of our community as a certified postural expert, certified postural neurologist. So I'm Dr. Krista. For any of our new guests, thank you for joining us. And we're going to be talking about brain-based ergonomics. We'll dive into the details here in just a moment. I just want to give you guys a moment to log on. And if you are so inclined, if you're in front of a device right now, be sure to give us a shout out on social media. Let everybody know that you're extending your education today with the American Posture Institute on brain-based ergonomics. We have Jackie from Australia. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for joining in from Australia. All right, guys, let's talk about brain-based ergonomics. So as I mentioned, we're going to go through a lot of different topics. Now, at the end, I am going to open it up for a live Q&A. So if you have any burning questions along the way, you can type it in the side. I might miss it as I'm talking, and I want to let you know that in advance, but I will definitely open it up for a live Q&A at the end. So if I somehow miss your question as I'm going, we'll get back to it. Don't worry about that, okay? All right. So what is postural ergonomics, and how is postural ergonomics different than traditional ergonomic education? So postural ergonomics is just as it sounds, it's posture and it's ergonomics. Now, where other ergonomic certifications and other ergonomic courses, what they tend to focus on is they tend to just focus on the workspace that the person works in. And I'm not devaluing that because it is important, but what the difference is with postural ergonomics is that we focus on the person within the workplace. So at the American Posture Institute, our goal is to optimize human performance and human function of all people, whether they're in your office or whether they're in their office. So what's cool about postural ergonomics is we're saying, okay, we recognize that clients are coming into our office for, let's say, an hour a week, but they're in their office 40 to 60 hours per week. So how can we optimize the human design and the human function and the neurocognitive capabilities of these individuals within their workspace? So when we focus on postural ergonomics, then we're taking into account the person within their workspace. We're not trying to fit the workspace to the person. We're trying to optimize human capacity, optimize human performance of the person so that they can resist postural collapse within any workplace that they're put in. So an interesting change in our society has shifted in the last 20 to 30 years. And that shift has really taken place with the digital age. So what we've seen is that people have gone from very laborious, jobs and occupations that required working outside, lifting and handling heavy materials, working on assembly lines, creating new products. They were very much more physically active during their workplace. What we've seen now with the shift in the digital age is that professions are becoming more and more specialized. Our ability to utilize computers has replaced a lot of our need to be out and about creating, and we're able to do so much more from our device. So what we've seen is a shift from people working outside, doing hard, laborious work, to working inside, sedentary, in front of a computer for hours and hours on end. Now, the reason we've seen a shift take place with ergonomics is that we used to just focus on the workplace, and we would give a little bit of attention to the patient's posture in their workplace, but we weren't focusing on their cognitive development. With this change from being outside, from being more active, from doing, physical activity during the workday, and this change with the digital age, now we have more of a need to focus on the neurocognitive aspect of the person, because our climate and our environment has changed. And if we don't change our education and our approach to taking care of our patients and our clients, then we are going to miss an important healthcare curve. But what's good is by joining us today and staying, up to date with this information with the American Posture Institute, is we're going to position you so that you can stay ahead of this healthcare curve. So with postural ergonomics, then, we focus on 4 key components. With postural ergonomics, it's functional, postural, brain-based, and then environmental. So functional is the functional human capabilities of the person within their workspace. So for example, do I have range of motion? Am I able to perform functional human movements within my workspace? That's the first key component, is function. And then postural. So do I have the ability to resist gravity with upright postural design, or do I go into a postural collapse position as I'm performing my work? So the ability to resist gravity in an efficient manner with static and dynamic postures is the postural component. And then the third component of postural ergonomics is brain-based. So brain-based is neuroergonomics. It's cognitive ergonomics. It is evaluating the function, the neural capacity, and the brain function of the person within their workspace, and then understanding where deficits are determined and how we can optimize that to improve neurocognitive output for that worker. And the fourth component of postural ergonomics is environmental. Now, environmental with classic ergonomic education is first. Again, it's focusing on the environment that the worker is in instead of focusing on the person. We are not neglecting the importance of having good ergonomic equipment, because it's important, it's valuable. But what we're saying is that's going to be the fourth component to support good function, to support good posture, and to support good brain-based function. So we're focusing on these 3 components first, and then what we're doing is we're recommending good ergonomic equipment to have an environment that supports optimal human performance and optimal human capabilities within that workspace. So that's an important shift in mindset, an important shift in thinking that is necessary in this day and age. So again, the 4 components of postural ergonomics: functional, postural, brain-based, and environmental. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into brain-based. So you guys may have heard of neuroergonomics, and for some of you, it might be completely new. Now, if you've studied postural neurology with us, you know that I love this topic, and the reason I love it so much is because it is cutting edge. And it is so cutting edge, in fact, that there's research out there, but it's been primarily just from a research aspect. We haven't seen hardly any healthcare professionals throughout the entire world implement this stuff into practice yet, which is good news for us because it positions us in a unique aspect where we can be helping our clients at this whole new level. So neuroergonomics then has been around, let's say 10 years, and it has been very much focused on the research. What we're saying at the American Posture Institute is let's evaluate this research, let's take in this research and understand that it's an evidence-based concept, but then let's pick it apart and say, how can we actually apply it with the modern day worker? So Mrs. Jones comes in on Monday morning and she's a seated desk worker. How can we take this research information and apply it to Mrs. Jones? Because that's the most important thing at the end of the day, applying it to your patients. So neuroergonomics, or brain-based ergonomics, is the evaluation of your brain at work. And the goal is to improve neurocognitive output. Cognition is your ability to think and process incoming information. And the result of good brain-based ergonomics is higher levels of cognition, higher levels of motivation, better productivity, better safety, because we're preventing neural fatigue. And when we prevent neural fatigue, we have the ability of performing at a higher level. Now, recognize that many ergonomists are missing brain-based ergonomics within their assessments, their ergonomic assessments. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you followed our work on digital dementia, then you understand that being seated in front of a computer with poor postural design is creating changes within our brain in a very negative manner. Not only is it declining our posture, is it declining our physiologic capability as a human being and a human species, but it's also changing how the wiring and the function of our brains. So studies have actually shown that less mobility and postural hyperkyphosis. Postural hyperkyphosis is forward head posture, anterior rolling of the shoulders, this position. When workers have less mobility, meaning that they have less range of motion, and when they have this postural hyperkyphosis presentation, they're actually demonstrating with early aging, with a decline in memory and a decline in cognition. So that's research. It's either from 2016 or 2017, but it's brand new research showing that with postural hyperkyphosis, you have decreased cognition and decreased memory. Now, for workers who are doing specialized job tasks, they need that high level of cognition, and they certainly need the ability to remember facts and recall those facts in working time. So it's also more easy now to get distracted than ever before. So what's interesting is that, we went from being a species that was outside creating work and creating output in a nature scene, in an environment, but now we're seated in front of our desks. And what's interesting is that we have more notifications coming at us than ever before. Workers, while working on a computer screen, they have their iPad right next to them and their cell phone right here. And each time one dings, we have more and more notifications going off. That it's creating a constant shift in attention, and our focus is going from here to here to here to here. And then if we're not having a notification, what are people doing? They're checking their phones to see if they have a notification just in case they missed it. So our ability to focus as a human species has changed. As smartphones get smarter, our posture is declining, our posture is getting weaker, and so is our ability to stay focused on immediately important tasks. So let me give you some examples of how human beings, how we've literally stopped using our brains, or how we've changed the neural capacity of our brain output. So research was done about Googling answers. You guys know what I'm talking about. Whenever somebody asks any question, what time is it in New York City? Or what's the conversion from Fahrenheit to Celsius? What time is it in Dubai? So these are things that we have mathematical equations for, things that we could figure out on our own. Or you think about a time period in history. So, you want to recall events from history. Instead of actually thinking about the things that we've learned and trying to recall that information, what we've found through the research is that 80% of people Google answers before even trying to come up with the answer. So somebody says, hey, what time is it in New York City? And you're sitting in California or in Singapore or in Australia, like some of our guests today. And it is more common for that person to just Google the answer instead of even trying to figure out the time zone conversion. Or somebody says, how do you convert kilograms to pounds? Instead of trying to figure it out, it's 80% of people are going to go to Google and just type it in without even trying to figure it out or remember the answer. In addition to that, the majority of Googled answers come from a worker's desk. So that means that as we're at our desks working, we have neglected our ability to recall things from memory and to bring our cognition into play. And what we found is that people are seated at their desks, they're sedentary, and they are Googling answers before even trying to activate their brain. It's like we're just keeping ourselves mindless by Googling answers. And that was research that was done in 2017, so it's very current. Also, if you think about navigation, so as we sit down in our cars, we type in the address to our destination, and then we just start going. And we start going based upon the feedback from the GPS. The GPS tells us exactly where to go. Because of this, I don't really need to be looking around me. Meaning, back in the day before we had GPS, when we were trying to find a destination, if I was staying at a hotel, for example, I'd ask the concierge, and then they would draw a map. They would say, go to the stoplight, take a right. As you take a right, look for this, this, and this, and then take your next left. So we were very cognitively aware of where we were. Our perception was constantly active. We were looking for visual signals within our environment, within our space. So we had good visual spatial processing taking place in the parietal lobe. And then we could remember directions better because it was a cognitive process. It wasn't mindless. It was a very cognitive process to find our destination. Now with GPS, all we're doing is listening to cues, and we just follow along the path. We don't need to engage our brains, so we just flat out don't. Meaning you get to your destination and literally you couldn't find your way back if you tried because you were so mindless in the process that it was not a cognitive experience, it was a mindless experience. So this is another example how we've literally turned off our brains at work. That was more research from 2017. Now, in addition to lack of utilization of our brains, how we used to utilize them, we also have anxiety at a much higher level now when we don't have our devices. So it's interesting because what they found is that heavy internet users, people who utilize their devices more than 8 hours per day, can only last about 10 minutes without a device before their anxiety is measurably high. Okay, one more time. People who utilize the internet and utilize their devices excessively, they can only go 10 minutes without before they have these high anxiety levels. And the study participants were asked, okay, so in this study, this was interesting. They were asked to read a passage. And what they found is, and there was one group who just read the passage and they couldn't see their cell phones. And then there was another group, they would read this passage and their cell phone was intentionally placed right in front of them. And they weren't able to check their cell phone while reading the passage, but they had notifications dinging the whole time. Now, the group that had the cell phone in front of them, as they were reading the passage, they had spiked levels of anxiety because they're seeing the notifications happen and they couldn't check their cell phone. They were seeing spiked levels of anxiety. They were seeing all kinds of cognitive errors and slower reading capabilities because the person could physically see their cell phone notifications, but they could not check them. So it's so interesting how our dynamic has completely changed. This is why there's such a need now for neuroergonomics, because that's literally what's causing mistakes. It's causing human error. It's causing cognitive slip because of our inability to engage our brains like we used to do. Overconnected students and adolescents are not much better than us adults. So researchers found that 4 of every 5 students had significant mental and physical distress, panic, confusion, and extreme isolation when forced to unplug from technology for one day. One day, they went into full-on distress, panic, confusion, and extreme isolation by not having a cell phone or a device for one day. So that's 4 out of 5 children, 4 out of 5, meaning that that's how they're growing up now, where they go into extreme distress without their devices. 4 out of 5 in them to constantly be checking their notifications, constantly being distracted by what's happening to stay connected on social media. They're completely losing their connection with their occupational tasks right in front of them. So we understand the need for brain-based ergonomics, and we understand that traditional ergonomic education is just focusing on ergonomic equipment. It's not focusing on the person within their workspace, and we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Because even if I have good ergonomic equipment, if I'm not taking care of my brain at work, what's the result going to be? The result is going to be a decline in human performance, absolutely every time. So we need to take care of our bodies in multiple different aspects. From a functional perspective, our ability to move in complete range of motions and multiplanar actions and perform complex movements with our joints and our musculature and our posture system. Our posture is so important. It's our ability to resist gravity with upright, resilient postural design. And brain-based is our ability to create neurocognitive output in the most efficient manner possible. And then, of course, the 4th component, again, going back to our 4 key components of postural ergonomics, is environmental. We work on functional, postural, and brain-based first, and then we create great ergonomic designs, ergonomic setup to then prevent further postural decline and support good human function in the workplace. So I wanted to provide you guys today with some neuroergonomic solutions that you can take and implement without spending a single dollar tomorrow in practice. So you can take these 5 things, you can recommend them to your clients, and they are going to have better neurocognitive output in their workspace. Now, what does this do for you and what does this do for the client? For you, you're taking care of the patient outside of your office now. Because let's face it, when they come in, you give them your full attention and you give them great treatments and you take care of them. But the second they leave your door, you have no control over what they're doing. And you can either set them up for success by giving them great recommendations, or you can just let them go and say, okay, I'll see you next week. Yes, that's an option. You've technically done your job. But if we want to be the best healthcare professionals, completely well-rounded, then we need to take into consideration what the patient is doing outside of our office, what they're doing in their office. They spend maybe an hour per week in ours and 40 hours per week in theirs. How we set them up for success is by taking good care of them that hour that we're with them per week, but also giving them great action steps for posture habit reeducation and good ergonomic design to prevent postural decline within their workspace. So let's go through these 5 strategies and solutions that you guys can implement with your clients. So number 1 is I want you to talk to your clients tomorrow in practice about really embracing nature. See, nature and green space has an important effect on human physiology. It has a calming influence on workers, and it's advantageous for attention restoration. Without adequate time spent in nature, workers present with higher stress levels. So researchers have even found that exposure to green space results in a significant reduction in ADHD for developing children. So I bring that up because, again, how we help our children thrive throughout their development turns them into adults who enter the workforce at a certain state. If they are used to having green space and proper development, by the time they get to the workforce, they're going to be more motivated, they're going to be less stressed out, they're going to be performing at a higher level. If they are constantly in a state of ADHD, of stress, of little to no exposure to nature, by the time they get to the workforce, they're going to continue that, and they're going to continue having a lesser level of productivity. So researchers have found that green space has a significant reduction in ADHD in both areas of impulse control and attention ability. So nature not only has attention restorative benefits, but also activates all senses to enhance multisensory learning abilities. Even exposure of just 20 minutes per day to green space or nature significantly reduces effects of ADHD. And keep in mind, your adult patients have ADHD as well too. It's not like it necessarily goes away unless we're very proactive of helping it go away. So recognize that our clients need exposure to nature. They absolutely need it. And even if they cannot get that exposure to nature because their occupation absolutely does not allow it, at least emulating the nature experience with green space and with nature sounds. Okay, that's at least going to help bring them into a more parasympathetic state. All right, so the next strategy is to stop multitasking. So it is an absolute myth in our society that women are great multitaskers, or, if you want to get ahead, you got to keep multitasking. Now, I wish that myth wasn't out there, because we actually have convinced ourselves it's a good thing to be a multitasker. I mean, people even brag about it. Yeah, I'm great at multitasking. Well, great at multitasking means that you have less neurocognitive abilities. That's not something to be bragging about, and it's definitely not something to be proud of. In fact, we should be bragging about the fact that we do not multitask. So you can kind of switch that mindset with your clients and talk to them of the importance of focused attention versus multitasking. So what we found through the research is that researchers investigated work efficiency, cognitive judgment, and the effect of time pressure on brain activity. Another study in 2001 noted that participants lost significant amounts of time as they switched between multitasks. This loss grew as tasks became increasingly complex. So meaning that as I switch my attention between tasks, I'm losing time. So every time I check a notification and then go back to whatever I'm doing, I lose time. And if I'm doing a complex task, I lose even more time. So if I'm doing a complex task, if I'm working on a budget, for example, if I'm an accountant, or I'm, want to submit my budget to my accountant, I'm working on an important task that's complex. It requires cognitive attention. If I start checking notifications or doing other things simultaneously, then as I go back to this complex task, I have now lost a lot of time in between, meaning my productivity absolutely plummets. Interesting research shows that children ages 16 to 18, 50% of children say that they almost always are sending text messages while watching TV. Why do I bring that up under multitasking? Because they are jam-packing 8 hours of exposure to devices within 6 hours, meaning that as I'm in front of this device, seated in a sedentary posture, I'm watching TV plus I'm sending a text message. So I can't even focus on the TV because I'm sending a text message. So my ability to focus between the two tasks of digital distraction is creating so much multitasking and so much inability to stay focused on normal tasks. So people are now multitasking in their personal life, which is spilling over into their productivity within their occupational space as well. So talk to your clients about multitasking. Shift their mindset that it's not good to be a multitasker. It's actually better to focus on focused attention because you lose time. I've seen research studies showing that it takes 3 times the amount to accomplish a task if you multitask during it. So just stay focused on that attention. And then the next step directly correlates to that with multitasking. One of the best ways to stop multitasking, which is step number 3, is to set a productivity timer. So what we found from the research is that workers perform better and faster if they have time constraints. Maybe you've had this experience where back in school you had a paper due on Monday. So, all weekend you had to write it, but you kind of put it off. And then suddenly it's Sunday night and you have 12 hours until that paper is due. And so within that 12-hour time span, you do faster work than you could have done, than you did the entire week before. Because you had that time constraint, it created faster and more productive work. Now, the thing that I don't like about that situation is that the stress was high. So we want to eliminate stress, but what we want to do is we want to set productivity timers that are motivating. So instead of just being totally stressed out with deadlines coming tomorrow, so I'm so stressed out and so I'm working really fast and now I'm freaked out, that's not what we're looking for. But what we're saying is, hey, let's give an hour of our time dedicated to that budget that we need to send to our accountant. And so let's set a productivity timer, and I'm going to give myself 1 hour to complete this task, and I'm motivated about it. Great, I'm going to have this done within 1 hour. So I've now shifted into a positive mindset about that task. I've set my productivity timer and go. I've eliminated my ability to multitask because I'm turning off my notifications, I'm setting my productivity timer, and I have challenged myself in a very positive manner to get that work done within that time space that has been allowed. Now, researchers investigated work efficiency, cognitive judgment, and the effect of time pressure on brain activity. For all performance tests, the results for auditory time pressure, such as an alarm, were better than those that there was no time pressure. So they not only were they getting work done faster, but there was less errors and it was more productive. So I'm faster, I'm more productive, and I'm making less errors with time constraints. So recognize the importance of a productivity timer. All right, and then step number 4 for brain-based ergonomics is to gaze into the distance. So it seems counterintuitive because a lot of clients are thinking, if I gaze into the distance while I'm working, it's going to look like I'm spaced out and it's going to look like I'm not focused on my work. So what do instead? They just sit in front of their computer and they type away, even though they're not doing things that are that important. So what I mean by gaze into the distance is that as a human species, we have changed our visual function. We used to gaze out in the distance into wide open spaces, into nature while we were working. But now, because we're seated in front of our devices, we're only looking this far away. So instead of looking just this far away, what I want your clients to start doing is every hour to look into the distance. So they're looking at their computer because they have to, for their occupation, it requires it, but then they take a gaze break and then they gaze into the distance. So they gaze out into space. Why is this important? Because from a visual perspective, which is directly related to cognition and functional output, is if I cannot converge my eyes, then it's going to result in postural distortion patterns, and it's going to create compensations, and it's going to create neural fatigue and overstress to my mesencephalon. Let's back up. So what we want to do is we want to do convergence and divergence training, meaning that I want to look here and then look into the distance and then look here and then look into the distance. This is my ability to converge my eyes to midline and then diverge them in a controlled manner. Converge, diverge, converge, diverge. And an inability to do convergence and divergence in a controlled manner is directly related to your cervical spine and your head posture and how you orient yourself around gravity. So for example, if I cannot converge my eyes to midline, one, it might create a forward head posture because I'm straining forward. It could create a head tilt, and it can definitely create a head rotation as well. So what you'll see when you actually test this on your clients is that if they have an inability to converge their eyes, what they'll commonly do is they'll have one of three responses. One, they'll feel really stressed out when you do the test. In fact, they'll even withdraw and go, oh, that hurts. We should be able to look here and look far. That should not be something that stresses out our neurology. If it does, that means that your patient is highly neurologically compromised and they need to get this fixed right away. So if they have that withdrawal, that means they're at a low level of neurocapacity, high level of neurologic dysfunction. Now, also, what you could see is that as you're doing the training, then they start to change their head posture. So a change in head posture is an indication that they have an inability of converging and diverging their eyes, which is creating this postural compensation. Or you might see that their eyes don't even move at all. This is also a high indication of decreased neurologic function, okay? So how you can test this is by testing near and far and convergence. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick a far distance on the wall ahead of you, okay? So to the patient, you're going to put your finger here or a pen, and you're going to say, okay, look in the distance and focus on a target. So if I'm looking at my distance, there's a specific target that I'm focusing on the wall ahead of me. And then I'm going to say, okay, look there, look at my finger, slowly bring their finger in and then bring it into their nose so they converge their eyes, and then hold that there for about 10 seconds. Tell them to look away in the distance, look back at your finger, and then slowly bring it out. One more time, because that was a lot of steps. So you start with your finger here. You're testing the patient. You have them look in the distance at a target. They're looking in the distance, looking in the distance. Okay, look at my finger. They look here. Slowly bring your finger into their nose, watching for their ability to converge their eyes. Hold it for 10 seconds. While the finger's here, tell them to look in the distance, back at your finger, and then slowly go out for divergence. What you just did is you collected so much important information about your client's visual system. So literally you're checking convergence, you're checking divergence, you're checking near and far. Now what that means is if you see any sort of saccade, if you see any jerkiness of their eyes, such as a nystagmus, they have an inability to perform these movements. Also change in posture, also blepharospasm and discomfort. If they cannot perform these, it means that we need to train them. So one of the great ways of training them is doing the exact same thing that we just did, but from a training perspective where they do that for a minute each hour, or at least 5 times per day. Another thing that you can do is what's called pencil push-ups or finger push-ups, where they just bring their finger in, they converge their eyes for 10 seconds, look in the distance, look back at their finger, and then bring it out, okay? So have them do that. And I want you guys to test this on your clients, because I think that you'll see what I'm seeing with a lot of our patients, which is that they have an inability to do near and far, and they have changes in convergence. Also, these are going to be the patients that tell you, hey doc, I have a headache, I have neck pain. What you want to do is you want to check their range of motion first, their cervical spine, perform this activity, and watch how that changes. Because through our training with neurology, we know there's direct connections between the visual system and head postural design in relation to the cervical spine. Okay, so that was a long answer for number 4, which is to have your clients gaze into the distance. So you want them looking far away. If they're a seated desk worker, they need to start looking in the distance and then looking close up, looking in the distance, looking close up. If not, they're going to lose their ability completely to perform that. All right, and then step number 5, we are going to talk about parasympathetic posture breaks. So one of the things that I recommend across the board to all patients and all clients is that they take a posture break. And a posture break looks like this. And the reason we want to do this is we're going anti-gravity. So we have the ever-present force of gravity pushing down on our bodies, meaning that if we don't resist gravity, we go down into a flexor dominant positioning. If we go against gravity, we go into an upright postural design. So what a posture break does is you bring your hands out, you push your chest forward, and you bring your head back and hold. Hold this for 30 seconds. I recommend that everybody does this. You should do this every hour. You should do it yourselves, plus you should recommend it to your clients. In addition to that, I want you to start recommending parasympathetic posture breaks. So take this one step further. They hold for 30 seconds. Hold, enjoy, give a nice stretch. And then take another 2 minutes and do a parasympathetic break. So seated in good posture. You've just done a posture break. Now maintain that good upright posture. Close your eyes and have your clients work all the way down from the top of their head, all the way down to their feet, and then all the way from their feet back up to the top of the head. while focusing on diaphragmatic breathing. So they're seated in good posture. They'll put their hands, one hand on their belly, one hand on their chest, and they want to feel the breath coming from their belly, not from their chest, and focus on good diaphragmatic respiration. Close their eyes and just be mindful of their body. So they can do it standing, they can do it seated, and what they're going to do is just close their eyes and focus on their respiration and think about cognitively each aspect of their body for 2 minutes. Be mindful. Now, the purpose of doing this is to go into a parasympathetic state, because what we see from our workplace is that so many people are just in a parasympathetic state all the time, in a sympathetic state all the time. We want them in a parasympathetic state. So they're in this sympathetic state of complete overdrive, just fight or flight. And what that means, if you think about that term fight or flight, we all know what it means. It's fight or flight. It's adrenaline. Literally, your body is pumping out adrenaline and cortisol, and it's telling you to get up and move around, go for a run. You're stressed out. You're supposed to move. But what do we do as a society? We get stressed about our deadlines. We get stressed about an upcoming meeting we have or what our boss just told us. And so we're in fight or flight mode. We're pumping out adrenaline, but we just keep sitting in our chair. So we're sitting there totally stressed out. And our body is saying, get up and move, get up and move, get up and move, hurry, get up and move. But we just keep sitting there. So to deal with that stress on the body, as it creates, you're pumping out cortisol. And if you're not fighting and flighting in response to that cortisol production, then you're gaining weight. You need to downregulate the system. Your clients need to downregulate their system. So instead of being in this full-on stressed out mode, they need to take these parasympathetic breaks and be mindful of their posture, because when they're mindful of their posture, then they can have complete and good respiration. When they can control their respiration, they can be in this parasympathetic state. 2 minutes is all it takes, a 2-minute reset. So 30 seconds here for the posture break, and then 2 minutes of closing the eyes and being mindful, focusing on respiration, going from sympathetic fight or flight into a parasympathetic healing posture, good respiration, and completely de-stressed. So important, such a valuable recommendation. And I know it sounds simple and it sounds easy, and people are like, oh yeah, I know I should do that. But are they doing it? And do they understand why? If you think about that we are supposed to fight and flight when we have adrenaline, and yet we just sit there, that is absolutely playing a toll on our bodies. And we need to get into a more parasympathetic state in order to have the ability to stay in a nice healing posture. So those are 5 recommendations. We'll go through those just one more time. Again, embracing nature. So getting out into green spaces, at least hearing nature sounds if they can't go outside. That's going to help them to have better focused attention. Also, stop multitasking. So we know that it takes about 3 times longer to perform tasks, and it's going to create more errors when we multitask. Set a productivity timer. So we've found that there's less errors and people get things done faster with higher levels of productivity when they have a timer set and they have that feedback of when they need to accomplish the task by. And then gazing into the distance. So I gave you guys a check. One more time with that check. Let's look at that. So start with the finger here. The patient, the client is focusing in the distance. They're focusing on a target. You say, look at my finger. And then you bring the finger in to this point. Hold for 10 seconds, watch for their ability to converge their eyes, and then say, look in the distance, look back at my finger, and then slowly bring your finger out to watch their divergence. Do this and check this on a few clients tomorrow and tell me what you see. Give me feedback on it, because I have a feeling you're going to see what I'm seeing, which you're going to see jerkiness, you're going to see nystagmus, you're going to see all kinds of cognitive decline, because patients these days need to work on this ability to converge and diverge their eyes and look near and far, because we're always staring right here. We're not looking out into green spaces in nature. Also, the final recommendation was to take parasympathetic posture breaks. Hold good posture, go anti-gravity 30 seconds, and then down-regulate the system, get out of sympathetic state into a nice parasympathetic state. Guys, we cannot continue to ignore the brain at work. Literally, it's crazy to think about that so few ergonomists in this world are focused on the brain at work. If we don't have good brain function and good neurocognitive capabilities in the workplace, we don't have anything as a species. We need to increase this productivity, increase our workers, our clients' ability to create great work within their workplace. And when they do, they're going to have a better quality and quantity of their life for it. So in closing, we're going to open it up for questions here in just a minute. I can see you've typed a bunch of things in here, so let me get to those in just a second. Before we go, I want to recommend all of you guys to keep the conversation going. We have a Facebook group called Postural Ergonomics, so you can join us in the Facebook group, Postural Ergonomics. We have some great new information coming out on ergonomics. As I mentioned, we're taking a modern approach here because it's not okay to keep ignoring the brain at work. It doesn't even make sense, right? I know I'm passionate about it, but I'm passionate about it because it's just something that somebody needs to step up, and we need to take action. So join the conversation. What I'm saying is we're going to do a ton of free information for you guys because we want you staying ahead of this. So Postural Ergonomic Facebook group. Again, the 4 key components of postural ergonomics is functional design, functional human movements within the workplace, postural design, how I resist gravity while static and while dynamic, brain-based, my neurocognitive function, and then, of course, environmental. Environmental is the 4th component. We set up the person functionally, posturally, and neuroergonomically, and then we provide them with a good environment that supports that good function in their workplace. So join the conversation in the Postural Ergonomics Facebook group. We're going to keep the trainings coming there. All right, with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us. Let's see some of the questions. And you guys, you can type in any questions you have. Barbara's okay. Janine says, how close 12 inches for convergence if the divergence means? Okay, so Janine says about 12 inches. You don't have to have a precise measurement, but about 12 inches is good. So you're going to slowly bring it in, and you're looking for the side that diverges. So divergence is the side of weakness, meaning if this eye diverges, that's the side of weakness that I want to train. Iris says, I just found out why sitting contributes to weight gain aside from the fact that you are not moving. Thank you. Absolutely. Because we're seated there and the cortisol is being pumped out. We're in adrenaline and we should fight or flight. Our body, our neurochemical output is saying, get up and move, get up and move, get up and move. But we just keep sitting there and we don't burn calories like we should. And we certainly do not move to the amount that we need to. Alfie says, this is great, Chris. I just created and posted a video I made demonstrating anti-gravity stretch. Awesome. Good. It's on YouTube channel. Thanks for sharing in Melbourne last month. Oh, great. You were obviously at our seminar in Melbourne. I'm very, very happy that we could reconnect virtually today as well. And that's great. Yeah, you guys share this information, please, online. Please make videos about posture breaks, make videos about brain-based ergonomics, make these videos because people need to know it. We can't keep this information to ourselves. We need to be telling the people in our clinics, obviously, but in addition to that, we can spread more information online too. Vasco, you're awesome as well. Thank you. Elvie says, Krista, would you suggest a parasympathetic exercise to be seated or standing and where? So with the parasympathetic break, I definitely recommend doing it standing if the person has the ability to do so. So anytime we can get them standing versus seating, that's a good thing. If they cannot stand up because of their occupation requires them to be seated in that moment, just have them seated. But at least have them do it. If they can do it standing, better. And where? Just at their desk. I mean, within their workspace, they can do it from anywhere. It's not like, one thing I want to say is that we have this like misconception in our society that in order to do a workout, or in order to like take a meditation break, that you need to have a yoga mat and you need to have your new clothes on and go find a space. Let's just figure out solutions, how these people can literally do this from their desk, and nobody needs to, it doesn't have to be this big thing where they stop work. It's like, okay, I just set my productivity timer for 58 minutes to complete this task. Once that goes off, I have my 2-minute parasympathetic break. I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to take a posture break, and then I'm going to be mindful for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to keep going with my work. So we're not trying to break up their work day. We're not saying go find a space and, go sit down and meditate. What we're saying is be mindful for 2 minutes every hour. And when they have the ability to go outside, great. If they can walk and talk, for example, if I'm on a meeting, there's no reason, on the phone, if I'm on a meeting on the phone, there's no reason I need to be seated at my desk. Go take that call outside if you can. Just grab your headphones, go for a walk outside. When we recommend things like this, one is increasing non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is so good. Also for Iris was talking about, losing weight at work as well. That's going to be a good stimulus for that too. All right, guys, any other questions? I hope you guys enjoyed the information. Janine says, is there any other research for color benefits for brain-based activity? So that's an interesting question. Blue is going to be stimulatory to the brain. So blue light, for example, coming out from devices, stimulation is very stimulatory, which is not a bad thing when you have stimulation during your workday. Okay, it's a good thing. But what we're seeing is that we're so overstimulated at this point that we need to downregulate and have less blue light emission. So blue is stimulation, and red is going to be more of a more relaxation. So for your workers specifically, it's not that they can't have blue light emission, because they can, but it needs to be regulated. So for example, especially if they have sleeping disorders, having them cut off their device time mid-afternoon and not using devices in the evening. Also having red up, also having red lens glasses to block the amount of blue light coming in is something that's really important as well. Kate, do people wear glasses during these exercises? Yes, Kate, great question. And thank you for asking that, because I should have mentioned that. So what we're interested with from postural ergonomics is making it functional, in the sense that we're not trying to be optometrists. What we're trying to do is look at their eyes, how they're utilized the most often, which is with their glasses or contacts in, for people who wear glasses and contacts. So leave their glasses and contacts in and perform the exercises and the training that way. Iris, this is so pertinent to my presentation on repetitive stress injuries. Great. That's awesome. Iris, I hope you have a wonderful presentation. Repetitive stress injuries are, from a musculoskeletal perspective. So we didn't even go into musculoskeletal issues today, repetitive stress injuries and musculoskeletal issues. But please know that poor ergonomic design and postural decline and poor functional human movements within the workspace is literally the culprit of so many preventable diseases. It's absolutely crazy. So Iris, I'm excited for you to present that information to your clients and your following, because they need that information. Michael, this is a lot of great info. Thank you. Will you be replaying it? So the replay is definitely available. Absolutely. The replay for everybody who registered will be sent out automatically, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure you'll get it automatically. If not, it's on our YouTube channel. Okay. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just take the YouTube video and I'll just post it in Postural Ergonomics Facebook group, so you guys can get it in there. Iris, are these webinars recorded? Same question. Can we access it another time? Iris, thank you for asking that. Like I just said to Michael, this is on YouTube. So as soon as we're done with the webinar, it'll go to our YouTube channel, the American Posture Institute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that video and I'm going to put it in the Postural Ergonomics Facebook group, so you guys can have ongoing access to it. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Krista. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to, it's in the evening. You're taking the time out of your day to then provide great information to your clients tomorrow in practice. That sets you apart, and just know that we support you in your ongoing journey of getting better education on ergonomics, on posture, on neurology at the American Posture Institute. Your success is our priority. So we'll see you in the Facebook group, and thank you to everybody. Thank you so much for all the kind messages I'm getting along the side. Fantastic. You guys are great. Really, really appreciate you. We'll see you in the Facebook group. Make it a great day. And remember, it's ergonomic design to prevent postural decline.